Hi, everybody. My name is Gary Gomes. I'm talking to you from New Bedford, Massachusetts. I'm a Vedic astrologer of 30 plus years experience, and I do this broadcast every week to check in on what's happening astrologically in the world and how the planets can affect you and how you interact with the planets. The Obviously, with everything that's going on, we're going to be focused on the election, and we can look at recent events. We'll probably look at uh, about four things today. By the way, if you would like to have a reading with me or ask me about Vedic astrology lessons, please do so. The easiest way to contact me is by calling me or texting me at 508 525 0001. So that's three zeros and a one. Okay, so 508 525 0001. All right. You can also email me at Gary Gomes, that's GARY at gmail.com. So I'll be the first one to tell you that I'm really sort of still sorting out the presidential election. And I'll also be talking a little bit about what's going on in France right now, because they've been having trouble forming a government after the left won the election. And also talking about certain other things going on, like what's happening in Brazil with X and certain other things. So I think, so this is not, obviously I have my own preferences and my own opinions. Try to cover things impartially and make sure I'm giving you good astrological information. The first thing I thought I would do today, rather than look at the world map, so I'll look at the first day of in-person voting, which, as far as I can tell from the research I've done, is September 20th, 2024. So our election cycles have changed a little bit. And I want to compare the charts of the two candidates on that particular day and also on election day itself to see which one has the better astrological chances of winning the election. Okay. And so I think that would be an interesting exercise to look at. This is what I would call moment astrology. So it's muhurta. It's an electional kind of astrology. I didn't look at when they declared when they accepted the nominations, which is also it's an important start to the waging of the campaign. So I think that's pretty true. But as I predicted, certain parts of Kamala Harris's campaign are starting to show some signs of weakness. A little later than I thought, to be honest with you, but they are starting to show some signs of weakness. Trump hasn't fared remarkably better, to be honest. But basically, things like the Robert F. Kennedy announcement, and again, it depends on which polling sources you look at too. So this is a relatively subjective assessment. So I think one poll had Kamala Harris surging ahead by about 5 points, if I'm not mistaken, 5 to 7 points, if I'm not mistaken. But I think that was only one poll out of Florida. The rest of the polls essentially showed things relatively within statistical uh, levels of confidence. And I'm using the wrong expression, statistical error. Okay, so essentially the race has remained essentially tied since the convention. Now, this is unusual because there's usually a post-convention bump, and it may be too early to see that because of the Robert F. Kennedy news that came out right after the Democratic National Convention ceased. But there seems to be, we're not seeing the increase. Now, again, there are certain factors which are affecting this. There are certain astrological factors which are affecting this. Kamala Harris has a strong Venus in her chart. Venus is very weak by transit right now. This could be a transitory phenomenon. So Venus is debilitated and with K2 right now. So that could be a complicating factor. But let's go first of all to before I get too deep into the weeds, let's go to the chart that we have for September 20th. Okay. And this is, if I can show it on the screen. Sorry about that. It's not showing on the screen. Oh, what happened? Okay. Now let's see the screen share. I got to get the chart up again now. Jeez. All right, hold on. And we'll go back to the screen sharing again. See now. And I'm proud to be eccentric. I don't know about you, but I like being a little unusual. All right. All right. So that looks like it's showing. That's jolly good. Okay. All right. So what we have here is the election starts September 20th is the earliest date I could find for any state. So that's for Virginia, Minnesota, and I believe it was one other state that had that as their start date for in-person elections. The problem I'm running into is I don't have the mail-in ballot start times, but this is the earliest you can vote in person. And so we have a Sun K2 combination, not good for incumbents, but again, Kamala Harris is not an incumbent president, she's an incumbent vice president. And Venus is in Libra by this time, so that should be helpful to her. Rahu's in the 7th, K2's in the 1st. But K2 is Sun in the 1st is not a good position for people maintaining authority. And Jupiter's in the 9th house, which is helpful to the Sun in terms of maintaining order. Mars is aspecting K2. Mars is not aspecting Mercury yet. So we're not really in lying season yet, just yet. But K2 with Sun it thwarts authority or it thwarts truthfulness. Jupiter aspecting the Sun is good for people making their opinion held. And this moon does sit in Kamala Harris's birth moon location. So that's a slight favorability. This Jupiter sits in Trump's 10th house. Excuse me, and Mercury sits in Trump's 1st house. Mars sits in Harris's, so that Mercury in Trump's 1st house gives attainment of goals. Mars is in the 11th house, which is a favorable planet for Trump, extremely favorable planet for Trump. It's not, this is Harris's rising sign. That's not a favorable location for Harris. But if I were to judge, I say they're about equal. You know, I say it's about equal odds. Now, again, Harris has, if you go to previous broadcasts, oh, and by the way, I do want to take a little bit of a victory lap because RFK's, and I didn't think about this until uh, a few days after RFK made his announcement. And I said that the far left and the far right would come together before the end of the year. And actually, that's, I would say, to a certain extent, true. RFK is a progressive candidate, you know, pretty much. He's not progressive in the mainstream Democratic sense, but he's a progressive candidate. He's very left wing, and I think also Tulsi Gabbard has a very strong anti-war stance, which is very left wing. So we're starting to see these loose alliances coming together and firming up. I think that so I will claim credit for a prediction that turned out to be at least somewhat true. And I think you're going to see more of it over the next couple of months. The other thing is, and we'll talk about this later on when we get to France. France has come to a standstill in terms of its electoral process, in that Macron won't accept the left coalition choice for prime minister. So I think, and there were debates, you know, so this coalition was formed essentially to keep Marie Le Pen out of power. But Macron worked with the left-wing coalition who actually has the most votes. Le Pen has the second most votes. So I'm not coming down on the sides of either party or candidate, but it seems like, and again, this is going to sound like a cliche, it sounds like the moderates are essentially becoming anti-democratic in order to maintain democracy in France as well as other places. So it's fascinating to watch this because there's this really strong desire to keep things relatively status quo, even if it isn't what the people seem to want, even if it's not what the election results actually show. So this will be an interesting struggle over the next few months. And I'm not saying that I necessarily disagree with the center of the road. I just think it's fascinating to watch this happen. So let's compare this to Harris's birth chart, and there's a special technique or a special table I use for stuff like this. So this is a now New Bedford chart, and let's pull up. And I haven't looked at this previously. Like I looked at November 5th for these two, but I didn't look out for. So we'll go with Donald Trump first of all. All right, so let's see now. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna swap these. And so I'm gonna use what's called astro mapping relocate. Um, we don't want to use that one, I'm sorry. Let's use this. We're gonna use a Maherta chart. See how favorable or unfavorable this is for Donald Trump. So the day is around 62% favorable. That's going to be the same as going to be true for Kamala Harris. But it's 90% favorable for Trump if that's the start of voting. Now let's pull up Harris. So I'm just paying attention to these little factors over here, which is a very quick and dirty way to assess it. Okay. If we go over to, so this is an electional astrology. The more green you see in a map, the more favorable the planet is. Yellow is moderately favorable, red is unfavorable. Okay, or it's weak, a little bit weak. So let's see what Harris's chart looks like on that particular day. Okay, so this is, ignores things like Mahadishas or major planetary periods. This is Vice President Harris's chart. So there's really no change for both of them. It's still relatively favorable. Okay, so this is fascinating. So, but if we go to November 5th, let's go to the November 5th chart. So the early voting doesn't help either of them, really, to be truthful. Okay. So let's go to November 5th, which is election day, which is the official election day. So I'm going to go to Washington, D.C. Okay, just because it may not be the earliest time, and this time may be a little bit off, but we're not. I guess the main point of this is an exercise to see how favorable or unfavorable the day is. And this is for Harris, November 5th. And for, this should change, so hold on a second. This is not right. Yeah, we should flip these charts. Hold on a second. Sorry about that, folks. Okay, so this is the Panchanga for the day. So this is Kamala Harris's chart. Down here, it's about 40% favorable and about 50% favorable for the day. So that would give us about even odds as to who would win. Let's go with Trump's chart. Sorry, folks. This I did look at the other day, so that's a spoiler alert. Excuse me. And it's about 80% favorable for Donald Trump. So now, does this mean Trump's going to win? I'll be honest with you, I don't know. But it does make me lean in favor of him having um, having a more favorable chart on that particular day. Now, again, a lot of the election so that there are a bunch of other dates that fall in between these two. That, so that may just mean Donald Trump will do better on that particular day, which is pretty standard. And we may see Ms. Harris do much better. She is in a moon sub-period on that particular day, but I just thought I would figure out the favorability of the actual days involved in the general election. And I just want to make sure I didn't make any mistakes in terms of the days involved. Give me a second. Because I'm only human, I can make mistakes. So this is, hold on a second. Let me see now. Let me swap the two charts and go back to layout examples. And here, sorry about that, folks. So this is the November 5th. Yeah, it's Tuesday, it's election day. Okay. And it's interesting because we have Mula Nakshatra operating that day, which is disruptive, you know. Now, again, this could indicate change either for a new candidate or for a disruptive influence like Trump. So I'm not again. I think one of the things that I've learned from previous forecasts of things like this is not to predict too early on, because by any measure or any rule of Jyotish, Rahu is really the most powerful planet in a Vedic chart. Venus is the most powerful graha, or non-luminary planet. So the luminaries are sun and moon. So Kamala Harris has that operating for her. Trump is in a Jupiter Mahadasha, and he's in a Venus subperiod. But Venus isn't necessarily doomed in his chart. It sits in the 11th house from the Lord of the Mahadasha. So it's really one of those things. But again, a 12th house planet usually isn't good for victory. So it's one of those things that has me kind of like scratching my head and saying, I still don't know, and that's not copying a plea. I'm just, again, I give the edge to Trump just because I'm seeing several factors working out more favorably for him than for her. The speech I saw, or the interview I saw earlier this week with Harris and Walz was not a good interview. That's just my personal opinion, but it wasn't a good interview. And I, and so she'll have to pull some. So either the idea that this is a new hope and a new dream and a new vision for the United States will hold up well. That message that she's promoting will hold up well, and people will accept that and want her to be the president. So they'll want to make history. But if Trump is elected again, he'll be only the second president to serve a non-consecutive term in office. And the last one was Grover Cleveland. I did his chart a couple of weeks ago, or last week. I can't remember which. And that's an extraordinarily unusual occurrence. So I'm going to stop that particular political conversation right now, and move on to more important factors, more important current factors right now. So essentially what we have right now is we have the moon is in Cancer along with Mercury, which is a relatively good placement. So people are ever relatively smart right now. Um, Venus is debilitated. So a lot of people will be very critical of either relationships and even a little bit quick to anger in relationships and a little bit unreasonable in relationships. Venus with Ketu is a combination for sort of like, I'm trying to think of a good way to put it. That's it'll give unusual predispositions or unusual choices to people. It can give a little bit of arrogance, I've noticed, to people, especially in terms of feeling superiority over individuals who are a little bit different or a little bit is aspecting Venus. So that, and Jupiter's aspecting Venus, which kind of cranks up the superiority aspect of it, of this combination. So I think what you're going to see over the next 3 weeks or so is a lot of people making fun of people who are a little bit different. That's just, and attacking them because they're different, which is really appalling to me personally, but that's is essentially what the combination means. Also, there'll be a lot of uncertainty about finance, a lot of not necessarily deception, but a lot of um, unexpected developments in finance, unexpected bills, because Venus is with K2. You'll find yourself veering off or getting interested in people who you would never thought you would be interested in. And also, um, I think it it shortens. So let's say you're expecting money, it will delay that, the receipt of that money. We have a Saturn Sun opposition in the chart. This isn't good for authority figures. Authority figures will feel a little bit too emboldened to take action. One of the reasons I mentioned Brazil, and so I pay attention to certain things that are happening around the world, not necessarily that I pay attention to everything, but I pay attention. But there is an effort for the Brazilian Supreme Court, which is one person, by the way, to ban X and ban Musk's assets. Also, there have been news reports that TikTok is banning negative ads, some negative criticisms of the current administration. The other thing is, if we have Jupiter aspecting the first house, a lot of these phenomena will be noticed. They'll be pretty much on people's minds. They won't be hidden away or excluded. Rahu is, so this Venus K2 combination can indicate shocks in the stock market, especially within about 5 or 6 days. And also, the Moon Mercury conjunction is actually rather nice. I always like those because they're basically quick thinking combinations. Mars is in Gemini, so there'll be a lot of attention focused on deal making or striking deals, in order to move forward. Jupiter's in Taurus. This is not Jupiter's favorable placement. Jupiter doesn't like Venus because he's essentially a competitor graha. So Jupiter and two um, teacher planets in Vedic astrology. Jupiter is the teacher of the devas, or the established order, and Venus is the teacher of the Shasas, or the Asuras, who are essentially um, those who oppose the established order. That's maybe the best way I can put it. So K2, so K2 is Venus is teaching K2, which is an Ashuric planet, to communicate, to grab opportunities. But this can also lead to flooding, in terms of natural events. It can lead to floods. It can lead to Venus is a watery planet, so maybe underground volcano or underwater volcanoes, or maybe underwater earthquakes. Um, Rahu is in Pisces. Again, this is not a great placement. Saturn retrograde is actually favorable for people who want to reclaim the past or move or look backwards a little bit. It'll be retrograde over the next 4 months or so. So that status will not change. And essentially that's also what's delaying the space station pilots from returning to Earth. Okay. So all these things are aspecting Scorpio right now. So anybody who has strong Scorpios is going to feel a little bit constricted or a little bit tied down. Anybody with strong Libras is going to feel like they have, I'm just trying to think, short-tempered, a little bit erratic, a little bit unsure of themselves. That's okay for a while, but extremely intuitive. Okay. And also they'll have some problems communicating because Venus with K2 tends to make the thoughts of that particular planet unclear. So there can be some recklessness with this combination, some carelessness. So be careful, especially in relationship life, in terms of what you say. That's sort of been a theme. So the anger components are kind of strong in this chart. Mars and Moon were conjunct over the past couple of days. So I think you've seen people a little bit more upset, a little bit more angry than normal. The Moon is approaching, it's extremely weak right now. So that's not good for peace of mind. We'll have a new moon within about a day or so. So that'll be good for feeling like you can start over or be clear. But people's senses won't be clear for about another 3 weeks. Not really until Venus goes into Libra. Okay, so this is where I think Harris has a good chance because Venus will be in a favorable sign in about 3 weeks' time. And that will help her because she's in a Venus subperiod. It'll also help Trump, to be honest with you, so it won't make his Venus quite as negative as it normally is. So this will be fascinating to watch the events over the next few weeks. I will make a prediction more towards the middle of September, and that was pretty typical with what I did in 2016. And it wasn't because I was any genius. I just went, no, Trump's going to win the presidency. It was just it was just um, I'm trying to think of a good way to put it. Looking at the charts, looking at Hillary's debilitated son, and should have been in the Mahadasha that Kamala was in to win. And even in that Mahadasha, she was in there are problems with Hillary Clinton's chart, and we don't have an exact time of birth. With Harris's chart, we do, but I just think that if the Rahu Mahadasha was more powerful for Harris, she should have done better 4 years ago, 4 to 5 years ago when she ran for the first time. She shouldn't have had her wings clipped so quickly. So again, it's one of those things that again, I'm not 100% sure. That's why I'm not giving again edge to Trump. Harris could still be president just because of with Rahu's dominance in the skies right now. But she will, if she is, she will face immense challenges. So will Trump, by the way, immense challenges during the first um, 6 months in office. If Trump wins, there'll be impeachment attempts during the first 6 months of him being in office. So this is going to be fascinating to watch, no matter who wins. Okay, so it's going to be an interesting year, especially with that Rahu Ketu conjunction coming in April. So let's move on to how the planets are affecting you personally and move away from this stuff. The thing I would warn people about, though, be careful traveling. Mars aspecting Venus is a classic combination for car accidents. And also Jupiter aspecting Venus is kind of impulsive. Don't over indulge, don't intoxicate yourself too much. I realize it's a holiday weekend, but your good judgment is not there this weekend. All right, so let's see now. The other thing is, so let's just go back to the individual signs. So I've spoken enough about that. And as a matter of fact, in places like France, Great Britain, Germany, a lot of the countries around the world who are having domestic disputes, Iran, China, I would expect those to worsen over the next few weeks. Okay. So let's go on to Aries for this week. Aries has Jupiter in the second house, excuse me. It has very well placed, good for gains for this sign. A lot of tension, though, connected around health issues and also around family matters because of the Moon-Venus conjunction. And there'll be a struggle for authority with kids for this sign. Venus is in the seventh house, so relationship partners will be incredibly critical. Saturn is in the 11th house, so that particular placement is good for gains, but through hard work. Rahu, again, this sign is overspending. I realize it may be pressure to overspend, but it's overspending. So what comes in goes out. Okay, for Taurus, this would be May 15th to June 15th. Jupiter is in the first house, which is usually a good thing. Jupiter rules the 11th house of gains, but they're temporary gains because of Rahu being placed there, and 8th house of inheritances. So this sign should get more financial assistance from inheritances or from people leaving him money. For Gemini, excuse me, Mars is in Gemini in the second house, so some gains from landed property. Moon is in its own sign in the third house, so again, it's a good sign for this. It's a good time for the sign to sell, for this sign to sell things. Sun is in the fourth house. Again, disputes at home. K2, not very different from Aries, disputes with kids acting a little bit difficult or intoxicated or just contrary. And Saturn's in the 10th house, good for work, good for contact with famous people for Taurus. For Gemini, this would be June 15th to July 15th. Mars is in the first house. Not a good placement for Mars, to be very truthful. Mars is in Gemini. It's really not a friendly placement for it. It can expose this sign to attacks from people, being victimized in relationships. Moon and Mercury will speak very well and will speak very convincingly. Sun is in the third house. Good time to fulfill ambitions and goals, especially connected with long-term assets and property. Venus and K2 are in the fourth house. Again, some domestic disturbances, some uncertainty about how you feel about individuals into your life. You may get attracted to some unusual people or may have some housing problems you have to face. Um, as a matter of fact, one thing I will say about the Venus K2 conjunction is it will cause plumbing problems in general for most people. So watch out for that. Watch out for car maintenance issues too. Um, Venus and K2 in the fourth house for Gemini, though overall it gives good success in career life, but it'll feel like it comes with a lot of work. And seventh house Lord is Mars. I'm sorry, sixth house Lord is Mars is in the first. There is some concern about the sign's health. Seventh house Lord is in the 12th. Gradually loosening or letting go of relationship partnerships. And again, good for gains, good for career recognition, but a lot of hard work connected with it. Somewhat good for financial gains, but the gains will go out very quickly. For Cancer, this is July 15th through August 15th. Moon and Mercury sit in the first house. The moon's in its own sign, which is a good thing, but it's a very weak moon. It's really almost new. So this can give a lot of optimism to this sign, but um, responsibilities will take away a lot of the money gain. Expenses and desires will take away a lot of the money gain from this combination. Sun is in the second house, good for commanding or leading people, not a bad combination. K2 and Venus, not sure what you want, but you're more critical of relationship life than you normally are, more uh, selective, let's put it that way. Although this is a strong sexual combination of Mars aspecting Venus. Um, the seventh house we're going to look at as giving gains. I'm sorry, seventh house Lord is Capricorn. So some concerns about health for Cancer as well. Seventh house for Capricorn, for Cancer, excuse me, is Capricorn. That'll give some expenses because of relationship partner, but also some gains. Rahu's in the ninth house, unexpected gains or unexpected opportunities. And finally, Jupiter's in the 11th house, good potential for financial gains and new friendships. For Leo, Leo has Sun in the first house. So the Sun and Moon are in their own signs, which actually is considered to be a good time to start things. And the nakshatra is a Slasha. So if you're very ambitious, this is a really good time to start ambitious projects over the next day or so. But basically, for the Sun overall in this chart, the Sun is surrounded by benefics, which is a good thing. So we have Mercury and Venus surrounding it. So it doesn't matter that Venus is weakened or that Mercury is in the 12th house. The Sun, this is considered an auspicious combination of Vedic astrology. So you will have good things coming to Leos this month. But again, they'll be a little bit stolen away or a little bit hidden because of K2 being in the second house. Saturn in the seventh house. Slow progress, but if this sign is determined, it can make a lot of progress towards its goals. Rahu is in the eighth house. There are conspiracies connected with this sign. Maybe people working behind the scenes to make sure this sign doesn't succeed. So be careful, watch your back. In career and income, and also in court matters. And Mars is in the 11th house, so it gives good gains from property, although a lot of those gains are spent. So overall for Leo, a mixed month, but more good than bad. Or a mixed week, excuse me, but more good than bad. For Virgo, Virgo has Venus and K2 in the first house. Now, I was actually talking with a student the other day, and I said, this is actually a Raj Yoga. So even though Venus is fallen, is in its worst possible sign, it forms, it's the ninth lord in the first house. So that's a trinal house in the first house, which is an angular house, along with a node. That creates a Raj Yoga, according to Parashara. So this month will actually be relatively lucky for Virgos. It'll give unexpected boosts in income, unexpected luck, new learning opportunities, new teaching opportunities, and new contacts. So that's a good thing. Mars in the 10th house will make it extremely aggressive in terms of career life. And Moon in the 11th house, good for financial gains, but a little bit weak. And Mercury in the 11th house, definitely good for financial gains, but very quick. Sun is in the 12th house. This isn't a bad placement. It'll make the sign more religious. Saturn's in its own sign, so we have a lot of combinations of planets in their own signs, which reinforces this chart a bit. But there will have to be an element of sacrifice in realizing gains. So you'll have to give up something. That's typical with K2, just in general. So K2 kind of interacts with the sun over here. But that Rahu in the 7th house, again, there's this tendency to be attracted to people from either other countries or other lands or people who might be unsuitable relationship partners. So just be aware of that. So this isn't a bad time for this particular sign, but it's like Leo, it's very mixed because you have expenditures going out because of government and also because of Saturn aspecting the sun. So there can be some detrimental health issues that pop up, especially connected with the muscles. So be mindful of that. But this is actually a relatively good week for money. For Libra has the Lord of Libra in the 12th house. Not exactly the best placement, but it is what's called a repeat Raj Yoga. So you have Jupiter aspecting Venus. Jupiter rules the 6th and the 3rd house, aspecting the Lord of the 8th house. So that actually produces good results from obstacles. Okay. And so if you lose something, you'll actually gain something, which may sound paradoxical, but that's the way this works. So essentially, the willingness to give up something in order to gain something is essential for this sign's success this month. Sun is in the 11th house. It'll give additional authority, although slow recognition is connected with that. Moon and Mercury are in the 11th house. That's the 9th house. Lord in the 10th house. And so career will be a big focus for this chart over the next few weeks. And let's see now. And gains will come within about a week's time because Mercury will move into the 11th house. Maybe gains from teaching or from advising people. That doesn't necessarily mean that you can't achieve that kind of success. You just hang around with people and give them good advice. But especially people who are counselors or professionals in those fields will tend to benefit from that. Mars is not a bad planet. It's a neutral planet for Libra rising. It's a wealth-producing planet, so it actually does some good things in the 9th house. And Jupiter in the eighth is not a bad placement because, as I said again, it's what's called a Vipri-Raj yoga. Jupiter is not a good planet for Libra rising, but it does good things in the eighth house. So, but it'll give more investigation, not immediate goals, not immediate benefits. Saturn is in the fifth house, so a lot of work you've done in the past will actually be noticed over the next few months, but you probably won't see any rewards from that until around the end of the year. Rahu's in the sixth house. Some health issues pop up from this combination, some concerns about health. Scorpio has, I always go upbeat when I get to Scorpio. Scorpio has Jupiter in the seventh house, Mars is in the eighth house. So this sign will feel a little bit afflicted or like people are trying to take it down or a little bit paranoid. Not unjustifiably so, if I'm honest. But it'll also feel like it's out of the limelight to a very large extent. Moon and Mercury are in the ninth house. This is not a bad placement. Um, um, there's not an exchange of lords here, but basically, this is a good placement for succeeding in goals or achieving goals or learning new skills. Sun's in the 10th house. So again, command of this sign is emphasized. Venus and K2 are in the 11th house together. It's really not a bad placement, but again, you have to watch who you trust. This is very true of Taurus rising as well. Okay. And let's see, Saturn is in the fourth house, so this can give some disputes or some sadness at home. Rahu is in the fifth house. It will give some fame or recognition to children, although children may be a little bit greedy, or else there may be inappropriate romantic involvements just because you have so many opportunities. So, Sagittarius, let's move on to that. Sagittarius has, this is December 15th through January 15th. Saturn is in the third house, a lot of determination for the sign. Rahu is in the fourth house, a lot of domestic squabbles. Jupiter is in the sixth house. This sign will feel like it's struggling to come to a decision. It's going to feel very competitive and aggressive, and relationship life will be tough. Moon is in the eighth house. It's in its own sign, so there'll be a lot of investigation, a lot of research. But relationship partners will tend to spend money, or relationship partners will be invisible. It won't be a good time to enter into relationships. Sun is in the ninth house. That's actually not a bad placement. That's actually good for a Rolex for the sign. And Venus K2, Venus is kind of a negative planet for this chart. So Venus K2 being in the 10th house will give good career recognition, but a lot of criticism on the job as well, unfortunately. For Capricorn, Capricorn has Saturn in the second house. That's a good placement. It's good for money. Rahu's in the third house. That increases the sign's ambition. Jupiter's in the fourth house. Jupiter's in the fifth house. Good for luck from previous activities. Mars is in the sixth house. That's not a bad placement. Sixth house Lord is the ruler of the 11th house, so it should give some gains from some efforts. Moon is in the seventh house, along with Mercury. Some difficulty communicating with relationship partners. Sun's in the eighth house, a lot of attention on research. Venus K2 in the ninth house, good for financial growth during this particular week. For Aquarius, Saturn's in the first house. It makes what's called a Sasha Yoga, SASA, and that puts Saturn in its own sign, so it gives good ability to command or lead. Sun's in the seventh house, relationship partners will seem overly aggressive or overly critical. Jupiter's in the fourth house, good for life at home. Mars is in the fifth house. Certain activities or certain desires that you want to see accomplished will actually succeed this month. Moon is in the sixth house. It's in its own sign. It will give health improvement. Mercury, the fifth house or in the sixth house, some difficulty with children, if I'm honest. Sun is in the seventh house. We've already gone over that. And we're back to Saturn in the first. So overall, not a bad week for Aquarius. Good for gain, but don't rely on it coming in without putting more effort into it. Okay, so keep up the effort. Whatever you're doing, keep up the effort. Otherwise, it'll fade away pretty quickly. For Pisces, last but not least, Pisces has Rahu in the first house. Some emotional disruption from this placement. Jupiter's in the third. Good realization of goals, good ambitions. Moon is in the fifth. That's a good placement for this particular rising sign, along with Mercury, the Lord of the fourth. So that's actually a kind of a good combination. So it'll give good financial results for this sign. Maybe from homes, Sun, or maybe from research. Excuse me, not hidden roles of research. Sun is in the seventh house. And if Sun's in the seventh house, opposing Saturn, the big lesson is to work hard, especially on your relationship life, because relationship partners will be overly critical right now. And finally, that's about it, I guess, for that particular placement. I think one of the things we're looking at right now is, let's see now, there's not a Kalasarpa yoga just yet. That's when all the planets fall between Rahu and Ketu. As a matter of fact, Saturn's the sole holdout. So let me just see now, Rahu. It's not even the potential for that really until next spring. So this is kind of an unusual situation. Collis Harbors were hitting all over the place in 2019 and 2020. This is almost a Collis Harper. Collis Harper when all the planets are between Rahu and Ketu, as I said before. But this really doesn't qualify as that. And so that gives a certain amount of willpower and less of a faded outcomes to contests or events. So you'll see a lot of struggle over the next few months and maybe not a lot of resolution until April or May of next year. All right, so let's go to the time-space map. I'm running a bit over, but we'll make it work. Oh gosh, I hate it when it does that. Yeah, it's much better, right? Okay. So Venus, Rahu, again, scandal and some objections over oil rights, over landed properties, over real estate in Hawaii and Alaska. This is fascinating because I've only recently become aware of issues connected with oil rights and or ability to drill in Alaska being an issue. I've been aware of property rights after the fires in Hawaii for quite a while, but that looks like that's either an upcoming or a current issue for this part of the world. We have moon passing over Arizona, close to California. close to Utah. I'm sorry, close to Nevada, in Utah, and up through Idaho and Montana, and close to the entire West Coast. So this indicates shifts in governments or shifts in political perspective. Mercury's passing through New Mexico, all the way up through Colorado, um, and into Montana. And I think what this particular line connotes is, and down through Mexico as well, is um, communications issues in that particular part of the country. The sun's pat is over Michigan, Wisconsin, uh, Indiana, close to Illinois, down through Louisiana, down through Mexico, and down into Guatemala, down through the Easter Islands. Nothing much ever happens in the Easter Islands, but there will be increasing government control in that part of the country. Um, we have a Jupiter line passing through Ohio, West Virginia, North and South Carolina, and Florida and Hawaii. I'm sorry, and Cuba, not Hawaii, and down into Panama and down into Peru and Ecuador, and there'll be legal disputes there. Uh, is a Saturn line. I apologize, not a Jupiter line. So there'll be some sadness about the economy. There'll be legal disputes in Panama, Peru, and Ecuador. My apologies about that. But economic issues in these states over here, and that'll affect the East Coast. Venus is passing over close to New England, but it's also passing close to Puerto Rico and also to the Dominican Republic. So this Venus line, along with this Mars line, will tend to make that part of the country more prone to fighting, more prone to arguing, more prone to water resource problems, and especially in Brazil and down into Bolivia and Argentina, there'll be arguments over resources because Mars is involved in that entire equation, especially true in Venezuela and Guyana. Um, we have a moon line passing over, descending moon line passing over France, which is consistent with what I had said before. And we have a Mercury line passing close to London and France. So we'll hear more about that. There'll also be government contention in Spain, Morocco, down into, I believe that's Ghana. I don't want to be fooling myself, but I probably already have. And down into, let me just check my world, my outlook, my my globe. Gosh, I really hate to get those countries wrong. No, that's Mauritania. My apologies. That's Mauritania. Um, and we'll have some increased disputes over government in Algeria and up through Germany. Germany's elections are really kind of interesting as well if you look at those, because the right-wing parties seem poised to make a lot of gains in both the east and western parts of Germany. So this is something which hasn't really been a factor for quite a while. And again, as in the United States, is tied to immigration. a great deal of it's tied to immigration. And I would tend to say, um, and again, you can hold whatever perspective you want to hold on this. Um, just from my judgment, it's not based upon around um, xenophobia. It's based around resources. Uh, uh, a lot of countries feel like they can't handle it. Um, and there's also a Mars line there, so there may even be some uh, rioting and street fighting in Germany. I hope not, but that's what seems to be in the works. Western Europe, or I'm sorry, Eastern Europe overall is pretty contentious government scandals going all the way down into Greece and Algeria and even into Egypt and down into Sudan, all the way down into South Africa. Um, there are um, there is a Jupiter line running close to Ukraine, not quite on it. Mars line running close to Moscow, but not right on it. So again, this is the area of conflict. Let's look at Jerusalem. Not at Jerusalem, Israel, excuse me. And and essentially that part seems to be relatively untouched, but there will be increasing government scandals just because of this proximity of Venus and Moon lines surrounding the area. As a matter of fact, you're going to see a lot of government scandals between Turkey, I would say between Greece, although Greece will be the starting point, Turkey, and all the way into uh, Afghanistan and Pakistan and Iran, and even Russia. You have a Jupiter line running through Russia. We already spoken about that. And there'll be court battles, and a Mars line running through Russia as well, down into China and down into Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, or close to Vietnam. And there's a Saturn line, which indicates a tightening of the economy in that part of the world. Uh, there's a Sun line right over here, which can indicate some government oppression in China and also even in India, especially around the Bengal region. Um, Let me just see now, and it'll be connected with quartz. There's a Rahu Venus line passing over what I would call the economic hub uh, of China, or one of the economic hubs of China. So that will mean essentially some financial difficulties for China and also for Borneo and Western Australia and the Philippines, and excuse me, not the Philippines, and Indonesia. Um, Finally, we have a moon line running through Japan. This could indicate either the diminishment of power of a government or its ouster. And same is true in uh, New Zealand. So we'll see a lot of governmental changes over the next few years. I think this will be a fascinating time to watch because the governmental changes map of the world hasn't stopped. It's continuing. So that's it for this week. Let me close this down and stop it share. So that's it for me for this week. I hope you had a good time. And as always, please, if you like this video or if you'd like to share it with people, to to discuss or even point out flaws in my logic, that's fine with me. I can always benefit from constructive criticism. Um, and that'll be it for this week. And I love you all. Please subscribe, like, and share if you would be so kind. It would help out the channel a great deal. And I'm slowly heading up to the magic 1,000 subscribers mark. That may sound picayune, but it would mean a great deal to me. So thank you very much, and I'll see you next week. And I will be putting on some more shorter broadcasts. I know I've been promising that for a while, but that is coming. And again, some interviews are coming as well. Thank you very much. I'll see you later. Be safe, be strong. For every problem out there, there's an opportunity. I love you all, and God bless you all. Thanks for watching. Namaste.